This is how I did a hydroboost conversion on my first gen Dodge Cummins using second gen parts and third gen parts. I didn't have to modify the pedal rod length. This plate is found on eBay for 25 bucks. For an explanation of how I modified this bracket to work with the third gen hydroboost pumps, follow the link in the description to my other video. This is a third gen hydroboost. I got it from B&R Autowrecking out of Boring, Oregon. They do ship. It came with the hard lines. The hoses were cut from the truck. I can't remember if I pulled this part or if I had them pull it. These brake adapters go from Buubble Flare to inverted flare, and the fronts and the rears are two different sizes, but they bring it to the same size, SAE style inverted flare. So I don't remember what this size is, but the brake lines that I cut these off of came from Napa. I uncoiled this stainless wire, bent and pushed the old fittings back and clipped the end off, and then I used pump pliers or channel locks or Knipex to squish it to where the fitting would come off. I did that to preserve the length. I didn't have to cut as much off. And then I used a tubing cutter to cut and then the ends off, and then I put the fittings on and reflared it, and this coil was still hanging way down here. And then this one I had to end up flaring twice because I didn't flare it enough. So I got that taken care of. These I believe I got off eBay or Amazon. I'll have a link in the description. So this is a 1991 truck. I got it on the trickle charger right now. You can see the intake horn here. This is a 2002 Dodge power steering pump. That is a 1992 intercooled style vacuum vane pump. I put that on, this combo on last year in 2022 because my diaphragm pumps were leaking. Even after I replaced the pumps, the housing was leaking. The parts for the diaphragm are really hard to get. One of the pumps was non-operational even after I replaced it. Some shenanigans happened where I lost the follower that actuates the diaphragm. The follower goes between the piston on the diaphragm and is like a spacer into the housing, because the housing is an eccentric cam that rotates around and pushes those followers, and then those followers push the piston on the diaphragm style pumps. So last year I went with the 92 because I wanted the spacing to be the spacing's the same as a second gen, but I was unsure if the second gen vacuum style pump like the 92 was sufficient for brakes. And the reason why I chose the 2002 power steering pump is because it comes with the second return line hose. Here's return line hose number 1. Here is return line hose number 2. And then this is the power steering to brake booster hose. It comes up here. Well, with the third gen style lines, it was too short. So what I did was I bent this tubing in the vise, because originally it comes all the way up to here. If you ever look at a second gen, it comes all the way up to here, and then this bend comes up here like this. Well, it's too short, so I rebent that. And then about a month ago, I worked on my dad's steering gearbox on his second gen, and we pulled the steering gearbox out of the junkyard, and I pulled this hard line with it. The hard line on this hydroboost, which is a third gen, the fitting was messed up, so it's kind of just hanging out here in the world. I don't know if I'm gonna make some sort of adapter that's gonna secure it there, or what I'm gonna do. It's probably fine like this for now. But this one is a 2nd gen style hardline. You don't need to use it for the length. I'm using it because my fitting was messed up. So that's a little explanation of the parts that I used. If you get this adapter plate and you cut off the old one, the OE style one, you have to modify this adapter plate. You do have to modify this hose, but everything else should basically be bolt on. A 3rd gen style hose is 41 inches in length. It also has a big, looks like a lead weight on it. I'm not sure if it's a heat sink or what it is, but it's, the 2nd gen is 34 and 3/16 in length. So if you're worried about the length and you don't want to bend this hose, just get a 3rd gen hose for here. But how it attaches to the pump might be different. These fittings are the same between the 2nd and the 3rd gens. The difference between the fittings is this one and this one won't fit on each other. They're different sizes. That's so that you don't accidentally swap your power steering to hydroboost hose with your hydroboost to steering gear hose. So the hydroboost pressure comes from the hydroboost and goes to the steering gearbox in this hose. Then if you can see down here, I did have to bend this hose a little bit once it was bolted in, and it still needs tightened up, but I did have to bend it to clearance this return line. This is the return line from the steering gearbox. This fitting is off of a 2nd gen. This might need tightened down too. The 1st gen fitting won't work with this hose because of the way that it's bent. So you have to bend this line. You have to bend this hard line. Pretty much everything else is bolt on. So yeah, I just gotta pretty much bleed my brakes, top everything off, and call it a day.